Hello everybody, Andy here, and today I want to talk about something that I definitely should not be talking about because it has nothing to do with kill teams, so why would I ever do this? It's Custodes, specifically the inclusion of female Custodes. Now you might recall that a few months ago, when the Custodes Codex dropped, there was a female Custode who had a really cool story. In short story in the Custodes Codex, it was just to win the blood game, not the Hunger Games, the blood games that they have for the Custodes. She dropped a nuke onto the golden directly on the golden throne. Super cool. Everybody agreed it was a very cool story. Unfortunately, they used the pronoun she. People got very upset about this, and finally, GW has given us a little bit of a comment on it. They went silent. They didn't really respond. They said one thing in a tweet. But let's be honest, that was probably the Twitter intern, not really run through the GW gristle mill officially. And finally, they've done a Warcom article where they've mentioned what their actual thoughts are on this. So I thought I would read their statement and discuss. So you might be aware that GW is currently doing an animation series called the Tithes. If you pay them on Warhammer Plus, you have the privilege of watching stuff that is literally a promotion for their toys. That's very generous, G-Dubs, thanks. Right, I'm going to tell you what they say, I'm going to read it out to you, and then I'm going to discuss. I want to be super clear that in this video, I'm just giving my relatively chilled out thoughts about something that I don't really care that much about. I'm not going to be super divisive. I think everyone can think what they think. There you go. And I want to talk about GW's portrayal of the lore in general and the way they think about it. And also something that's really interesting that's come up since then, which is the term tourist, because that's really interested me. It's been in use in, such circles where you're trying to divide people for a long time. You get to use, things like calling people an NPC or a tourist. It has become a very common bit of verbiage that you can apply to somebody. However, it only made its way over to the 40k, the hobby sphere, when the Custodes thing happened. So I want to read what GW says, say my thoughts on that, say my thoughts about whether or not female Custodes should exist, and then talk about the term tourist. Cool, let's do it. This is a long page. Dang, okay. So, Tyrith Shiva Kairos, the first three of a long list of honorific names earned fighting for the Emperor, has the privilege of being our first portrayal of a female custodian guard since the recent revelation that custodians can be any gender. This fact came as a real surprise to many, that's an understatement, obviously, since it wasn't something previously explored. That, in and of itself, isn't a particularly unusual thing for Warhammer 40,000 and its lore. There are simply loads of things the Warhammer Studios have never expressly stated, whether that's ruling them in or out. Now, let's just quickly clarify, because I know what people that are against female custodians are about to say, is that actually GW has directly said that, no, it has been stated very clearly, in black and white, it was expressly stated that custodians are recruited from the first sons of noble houses. Obviously, they use the term sons. Cool. They're about to go into it here, but until now, let's be clear, Custodes are just bigger and better Space Marines, right? Like, in lore, that's basically what they are. They're about to tell us that's not what they are, but let's read and see what they say. Since the earliest conversations about bringing the Horus Heresy to the tabletop and Black Library fiction, the exact nature of the Custodians has been under discussion. After all, their origins and means of creation, unlike, for example, the Legion/Adeptus Astartes, are shrouded in mystery. This is true. A significant advantage to this portrayal is that it helps us to address a common misconception, that the Custodes are just bigger, better Space Marines. Again, not really a misconception, just something they haven't told us isn't true, until they tell us it isn't true. But that's a thing they do, as they are about to explain. They aren't. Again, whatever, fine, it's fine. They are, but it's fine. Space Marines were made through industrialized ritual to be mass-produced, brute force weapons of conquest. And even 10,000 years after their creation, draped in self-assigned glory, that's still true of them at their core. Each custodian, on the other hand, is unique, painstakingly made through peerless craft and arcane artifice. Their physique, their psyche, and their very soul is a bespoke instrument of the Emperor they unquestioningly serve. This is true, we've known this for a long time. I think, yeah, Custodes are handcrafted, whereas although Space Marines do have a very rigorous process that you need to go through to become a Space Marine, everyone goes through the same process, and if you don't cut it, you die. Whereas presumably, with the Custodes, again, we don't know, it's never been explicitly stated, we don't know what the processes are, we don't need to know, we never will know, because it's irrelevant, who cares, it's space magic. Anyone could become a Custode. They all go through a different process. Cool. Each Custode, no, I've read that. We know a lot about Space Marines, relatively speaking, but there is still so much we don't know about the Custodians, particularly in Warhammer 40,000, and their recruitment process is the least of these mysteries. Bullet points. What exactly are they up to in the 41st millennium? What was their motive for joining the Indomitus Crusade? What do they really think of Guilliman? What secret weapons do they have sequestered away in their armory vaults on Terra? What does loyalty mean in a galaxy where the master you failed is silent and you despise what his empire has become? I like the use of the strong word, despise. That's the kind of thing that should be in real lore, not just in a weird asterisk in a Warcom article, but that's fine. Cool. Knowing that your literal strongest, most powerful warriors despise the Empire, I feel like we should know about that. That seems like a pretty fun thing to explore. Cool. Right. Now, after that first paragraph where they mentioned the female Custodes thing, there was another asterisk. That asterisk drops to here. We sometimes call these gaps, and they are quite intentional. They let you as collectors, players and fans fill the spaces with your own characters, stories and narratives, making the Warhammer hobby truly yours. They also allow us to revisit factions through miniatures, stories and animations, and offer something new and interesting. Imagine how sad it would be if we ever said, and that's it. That's everything you'll ever see in this army. No new models ever. That'd be rubbish. Cool. Right. So, I think they actually make a very good point here regarding gaps. Very often when it comes to GW, they do indeed leave these huge, massive gaps that they literally never fill in, and so hypothetically you could put anything at all into the gap that they leave, because everything from the animations that we're getting now to the novels to everything that they write ever in codexes, whether it's canon, whatever, it's to sell a model. It's to sell toys. It's great that it's over there making money on its own, but GW wants you to buy the toys, right? That's the whole purpose of G-dubs. And so sure enough, they've very deliberately kept their setting very open. And yeah, this makes sense. It's something I often criticize them for, because frankly, I don't think they do a particularly good job of it. But that's fine, right? Because truly, they are making a setting where you can do your own thing. Hence why whenever they get into kind of, you know, in-depth things, it's not my vibe, so whatever. But I find they don't do necessarily the best job. But that's that. Cool. So with that all said, that's their official statement about female Custodes. So, what next? Does anything need to be said, really? I feel like everybody had their drama like a year ago, whereas I've got to be honest, I did a video for my patrons just saying my thoughts on it, and my thoughts have not changed. I think female custodians are fine. I think at the time we had two groups of players being conflated together. Sorry, it's quite boring looking at a blank, just black and white. You can look at the tower behind me. That's much cooler. We had two groups of players being conflated together, which led to a very interesting dynamic online. We had people that hated the idea that Custodes can be women, and probably hated women in general, like invading their space is how they view it. But then also we had people that don't really care about that, but they do care about GW disrespecting their own lore. And so you had these two groups who arguably have completely different background motivations for why they dislike something that GW did, coming together and banding together. And the conflation meant that you could be arguing with one person about something they don't care about. So you're focused on issue X and they're talking about issue Y. And you saw it all over Reddit and Facebook posts with people just completely talking past each other. And you could tell they were both so far up their own arses that they couldn't realise it. And that was quite frustrating. And I was actually getting pretty worked up because it was why is everybody so frustrated about this? It's very strange. Chill out. Read what you're actually responding to. And if they're not arguing about the thing you care about, go argue with somebody else. Anyway, that did not happen often. People got very upset. We then also had a piling on from people that we would call red pill grifters generally. Don't get me wrong, there are, of course, the left-wing grifters too, but in this case it was the right-wingers who got pretty into it. So we got some very big YouTube discourse, if you want to call it that, about people that clearly, genuinely had no idea what Warhammer was, apart from the fact that it vaguely existed. You know, very much piled on and made, frankly, just terrible videos, because that's how, you know, the YouTube news sphere and grifting thing happens and occurs, and you just follow the news cycle and you talk about whatever your fans want to rage about, because people love to rage. Rage click, rage bait, it's great. So that was all that was a weird time, if I'm honest, and it pushed a lot of people vocally to say they're leaving the hobby. And that obviously didn't really happen because GW is making more money than ever. But it's nice to be vocal about how much you hate things, because even though you aren't going to leave, maybe your hatred and negativity will make other people leave. And that's great for you. Hypes. However, during this talk, we came... Oh, sorry. Female custodians are great. There you go. I have no issues with it. Good. The more the better. I like that they've added it. It would be a different discussion if we were discussing female space marines. I think that could perhaps be a touch more nuanced. You'd have to start talking about kind of what do we want Warhammer to be? Are we trying to specifically, you know, break apart toxic masculinity, and are we trying to discuss the role of men and women when it comes to war, and how an oppressive regime would actually treat these different sexes? Or do we say that actually, because in reality it would be, we've seen it happen with like Mao China, I'm not going to say other words than that, I'll probably get this video delisted immediately, but generally in this sort of regime, these places actually treat genders as the same, because you want to reduce the form of sexuality, because that could be a big motivator for people to rebel. And so you don't want that. So you actually, you know, you dress everybody in greys, you make everybody completely level and equal. It's a thing. You can Google it. It's fine. Or don't. Nobody cares. Cool. So anyway, female custodian is brilliant. Love it. Nice. However, I want to now talk about, oh, sorry, do I care that GW have in the past said that custodians come from the sons, the first sons of noble houses? Does it bother me that they then walked back on that? No, not at all, because I've been in this hobby since 2nd edition, and mate, that's all GW does. They just retcon shit. Because unfortunately for GW, if they want to progress the story, they have to retcon everything. Every time they want to push anything forwards, they have to go back in time. Because you can never go past the 41st millennium, because that's the name of the setting. So, literally, every time they want to add a new thing in, they say, hey, you know what we said in like the 5th edition core book, which has been canon for the last 15 years? Well, we're going to do a thing that canonically happens before that now, and yeah, so that means that that thing that we said then doesn't happen, and that's just a pickle that they got themselves into with calling it Warhammer 40k, and there you go. So I don't care that GW does that. It's not that I don't care. I think the setting is very important. I think it should be maintained. And it's very frustrating that GW is very, very bad at keeping things canon. But I'm okay with it. There you go. I don't put a huge amount of stock into it because GW's done it so many times already. So I'm used to it. It's cool. There you go. Right. Tourists. So this is really interesting. So obviously we had the thing come around from all the grifters on YouTube discussing, hey, everyone's a tourist. And then everybody online has started to use this as a very common argument. You see it now all over the place, if you follow Reddits and Facebooks and such, with people saying, oh, these guys are, these guys are, I don't want more tourists in the hobby. This guy's a tourist. Hey, we don't like tourists here. I'm like, Jesus, okay. And the problem is, I think, language is transformative. It changes over time. But goddamn, I think it's just because people are fucking stupid and don't understand words, if I'm being honest with you. So what tourism, being a tourist, actually means in this sense is that you come into the area, the sphere that you are coming into. Obviously, we're talking about hobby, but it could be anything. It could be golf. It could be cars. It could be computer games is obviously a much more common one. And you are a tourist, so you're not there to stay. You're only there temporarily. And what you want to do is change that sphere so that it fits you. And then, because you're a tourist, you're going to leave. You have no real intention of staying. Don't get me wrong, you do love what's there. Like, that's why you're there. It's not that you're faking your interest. You might be, but then you're probably something else. You're just a twat. You're not a tourist, right? So you're there, but you're only there for a brief time. So interestingly, someone that is just new isn't inherently a tourist. You can have people that have been into the game for a decade and still technically be a tourist. There you go. So it's a little bit interesting. However, online we've started to see people throwing around the term tourist for quite a while. So a while ago I did a video about more time where I said it's pretty good, but these are some rules that could be updated, right? Like, I think that these rules are probably outdated now, and if more time were to be done again, I think these should be changed, and that would be pretty good. And I got a few comments saying, Andy, well, they didn't know me, obviously, they're not regulars, they just saw more time, I guess. I said, that's a terrible idea, you're a tourist. And I was like, am I? I mean, I'm not playing more time. I'm not saying that these should be changed. I'm just saying that the game would probably be better if this was changed. And I think people get very, very, very sensitive about the idea of change because, in general, if you're online, you tend to get attacked quite a lot because you're a sensitive, delicate little flower. Hey, me too. Don't worry about it. We all are. And so we tend to be very divisive and very defensive about such things. So I understand that if somebody hears the notion that somebody else wants the thing they like to change, instead of engaging with your mental plasticity and thinking objectively about how actually maybe a game from 30 years ago probably could do with a few updates to rules and game design, maybe engage with that instead of thinking, nah, I don't like it, without thinking about it at all, and just throwing around the term tourist. Now, what would make me a tourist in that instance, interestingly, would actually be if I engaged more with more time. If I did more than a single video based on an event day and some practice games I did. If I actually entered the sphere, playing it more, and was actively trying to change it and was actively putting out kind of, custom rules documents and engaging more with people, and saying, hey, let's change the game, guys, let's redo this. That would actually make me a tourist instead of just a guy making a video. So, I don't know, the whole tourism thing, it's very strange because people are just throwing it out everywhere. And you'll often see, if anybody says anything, okay, so I've seen it so many times. It happened in Twitter, again, around the Custodes thing, where one of the literal original designers of 40k, like of original writers of the lore, said, hey, this is fine. And some guy, you know, responded to them, saying, oh, you're a tourist, mate. You don't know what you're talking about. It's like, he made it. What do you... So all I'm saying, that I like to keep that in mind anytime somebody throws around the term tourist. I think that tourist is actually a very good word, and if it hadn't been painstakingly ruined by right-wing grifters, we'd be able to use that and it would actually mean something. But yeah, that got ruined, unfortunately. So there you go. That's a shame. Anyway, keep in mind the term tourist, and in general, just know that when you see someone using the phrase tourist, if you check out the other subs that they are in, it's probably a lot of right-wing bullshit, which is a shame, because again, it's actually a pretty good word. Hey, the left has ruined a lot of words too. Don't worry. Everyone's a cunt.